Let's move on now to our top story, which is the Tory plot to oust Rishi Sunak thickens, with the popular Conservatism group launching a plan to install a Liz Truss-style candidate to replace him. Polls are consistently suggesting that the Conservatives are on course for a humiliating defeat at the general election, with the latest analysis predicting they might only secure 98 seats. And if the polls turn out to be true, the PopCons, as they're known, are plotting to ensure a free market libertarian type MP wins the ensuing leadership race later this year. The former Home Secretary Priti Patel is understood to be the favourite. Joining me now in the studio to discuss all of this is Chief Political Correspondent at The Times, Aubrey Allegretti, Tim Montgomerie, the founder of Conservative Home, and former Labour official Richard Power-Sayeed. Aubrey, obviously I have to come to you first because this story is your story. Tell us a little bit more.
So I think the backdrop to this is that MPs are still publicly standing by Rishi Sunak. A tiny, tiny number have publicly called for him to go. But behind the scenes, there is the sort of ripples of potential future leadership contenders starting to get their sort of ducks in a row. And part of what we're seeing here is people sounding out colleagues saying, you know, who would you potentially support in a future leadership contest? And one of the sort of factions or the many Conservative tribes and groups that has a stake in this is the popular Conservatism movement, which was launched by Liz Truss in February. She spoke at its kind of start of its campaign, and she's been working with Mark Littlewood, who she wanted to give a peerage to and was the Director General of the Institute for Economic Affairs, which shaped so much of her economic thinking. And the pair of them seem to want to kind of incubate or cultivate a candidate from the right of the party who holds the same sorts of economic ideals as Liz Truss did that really motivated her kind of growth agenda. And they want that person to be installed as the leader in probably 6, 7, 8 months' time, depending on when a leadership contest is held. Obviously, the problem is Liz Truss isn't a terribly favourable figure with a lot of the Conservative Party or with a lot of the electorate. So they're going to have a lot of work to do to sell them.
Quite. Tim, can the Conservative Party hold off until after the election before having some sort of leadership contest? Or actually, might Aubrey's story be, when we look at that, might we think, well, they'll be lucky to keep going until that long with Rishi Sunak?
Well, first of all, can I just say how amusing it is for Liz Truss to have founded a movement called Popular Conservatism. No one has done more to make the Conservative Party unpopular than Liz Truss. But putting that aside and answering your question, I came reluctantly to the view a little while ago that we would have to change Prime Minister again. I think Rishi Sunak is a good man, a decent man. He's just really rubbish at doing politics. There's something... For me, he's like someone who's watched political drama on television and sort of thinks that's sort of how you be. But what is there inside him? What's his irreducible core? What does he believe in? You know, this Conservative majority that exists at the moment might be the last Conservative majority of this size for some time. It might be the last Conservative majority ever. We should have used the last year or so to do some things that really needed doing, investing in defence, building houses, addressing the issue of vocational education in this country, some big things, but we've done nothing with it. I do not know if we go into a general election with Rishi Sunak as our leader, what our battle cry is, what we stand for. I don't know what the Conservative message is about defining Labour. Why shouldn't people vote Labour? We haven't defined the opposition. We've made it a referendum on ourselves rather than the choice which it should be. So the key moment will be the May local elections, and I predict there will be a leadership election. Whether he survives, I don't know, but I think there will be a leadership election. And he will probably need, in a way, to sort of address it and end the speculation anyway, because we can't go on with these discussions all of the time.
This must be music to your ears. As far as the Labour Party is concerned, here they are, as we keep being told, holding the Ming vase and trying not to drop it, all of those analogies. And there's the Conservative Party looking like they're going to be throwing things left, right and centre and impaling themselves and just leaving you to carefully get over the finish line.
I mean, it doesn't feel like a Ming vase right now. It feels like a pretty solid thing that you'd have to work pretty hard to smash it up, wouldn't you? Look, I keep coming on TalkTV and as the Labour Party former Labour Party official, and then I end up defending Rishi Sunak. So I don't know, at some point...
I think that's quite telling,
Yes,
perhaps.
yeah. Well, at some point the producers are going to decide I'm in the wrong job. Look, he's in a position that I think would screw over any potential political leader. And the thing that's making him flip-flop from one strategy to another, favouring one faction, then another, favouring one demographic or one group of voters and then another, is that his party is so disunited and so actively scheming against them that he tries to please one group of the parliamentary party, then another. If you guys could just unify around him, I don't think you'd win the election, but I think you'd be less catastrophically, doing less catastrophically in the polls. But you're not going to unify around him, so it's okay.
So it is music to your ears, in other words.
If Jesus Christ returned, now putting the theology of this aside, became leader of the Conservative Party, we wouldn't win the next general election. This isn't about winning, it's whether Rishi Sunak or someone else can minimise the defeat.
I think that the socialist candidate for Nazareth North would actually be the most fantastic possible leader for you guys, because what the Conservative Party has only won convincingly a single election since 1987. It was 2019. That was when they pretended to be an interventionist party that was going to do levelling up. They didn't. They probably didn't intend to do so, but they pretended very effectively. And that was the one time when they won so well. With Liz Truss popular conservatism, they are guaranteed to lose.
So, Aubrey, let's think about... I think the one thing we do know is that Rishi Sunak will be out of a job as leader of the Conservative Party sometime this year. Sometime in 2024, that's going to happen. There will be a vacancy for that job. So who do we think is most likely to get that job?
Well, there's certainly a lot of people vying for it, although they may not find the job of Leader of the Opposition quite as exciting as they would have found being Prime Minister.
Yeah.
And so there were some people looking at people like Penny Mordaunt, who has a sort of relatively slim majority in the grand scheme of things, and therefore may not have the luxury of time to wait around to try to run to be leader, because if she doesn't, and the general election is in October or November, there's a chance she loses her seat.
So the theory, just to jump in there, the theory being that if she were to become leader of the Conservative Party and Prime Minister, she would hold on to her seat, because the added publicity, that it's very rare for a leader of a party, even if they've got quite a dodgy majority in their personal constituency, to lose their seat because they get the full force of the party behind them. Is that
that's sort of one of the arguments, but the other is just that you get to be Prime Minister for 4 or 5 or 6 months rather than not at all.
That's not bad.
Which is, 3 or 4 times what Liz Truss managed. So it's still some feat for some people.
Yes.
So you've got kind of people like Penny Mordaunt on the one hand, who again insists publicly that she is loyal. You've got people like Grant Shapps. He's the person who's supposed to be kind of most openly on manoeuvres.
Yeah,
there's a lot of kind of courting of Tory candidates as well, because of the high turnover of MP, you're actually going to get a lot of new people joining the Conservative Parliamentary Party who will then decide the next leader.
Well, you say a lot, but if the Parliamentary Party is fewer than 100, that's not a lot. Yes, it's quite a lot of new blood, proportionate speaking, but it's not a big number.
No, exactly.
Of MPs.
The Conservatives' worst performance probably ever. And, people sort of talk about the days of Theresa May leading the Conservative Party into the European elections in, I think, 2019. And basically, one MP said to me recently, we need to do the same thing with the local elections on May the 2nd this year. Let the electorate deliver the punishment beating and then change leader.